Discover Windolph's startling narrative of Custer's last stand. Charles Windolph served as a United States Army soldier engaged in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. A private in Company L, 7th Cavalry Regiment, Windolph counted among the battle's scarce survivors. An immigrant from Germany, he enlisted during 1872, completing 5 years of service and receiving the Medal of Honor for his conduct under fire. His battle description is considered exceptionally precise and thorough, securing his place as a noted personality in America's past. On that decisive Sunday, June 25th, approaching midday, we traversed the ridge separating the Rosebud and Little Bighorn rivers. Our regiment advanced westward in column of march. The men of every company rode 4 across, separated by intervals of 50 or 60 feet. Before we start, please like and subscribe to our channel to assist our community. Abruptly, our column stopped. Lieutenant Cook ordered Benteen to lead his Company H, plus D commanded by Captain Weir and K under Lieutenant Godfrey, to reconnoiter the high ground and combat any adversaries found. General Custer kept troops F, C, and L with him, while Major Reno commanded troops M, A, and C alongside the bulk of the Indian scouts overseen by Lieutenants Varnum and Hare. Our 7th Cavalry, totaling 600 troopers, split into groups chasing Indian bands across broken country. We understood a significant hostile force waited 12 to 15 miles westward, yet its precise strength was unclear. Our Indian scouts feared thousands of hostiles, yet Custer and most officers judged they confronted perhaps 1,000 to 2,000 warriors, probably inadequately equipped. They anticipated only a delaying skirmish, permitting the Indians to flee. Instead, we encountered a force possibly double that estimate, outmatching Custer's 600 soldiers fivefold. Custer intended a surprise assault at dawn on June 26, but opted to strike instantly when enemy scouts sighted his approach. Benteen, commanding 3 troops, advanced to scout. We journeyed over difficult ground, which strained the horses considerably. From each subsequent hill crest, Lieutenant Gibson signaled rearward that he observed no indications of Indians. Even the enlisted men in formation believed our errand pointless. After 2 hours, we swung back onto Custer's trail, eased to be returning toward the small valley. We proceeded west along a minor stream where the front pack mules became mired in a bog, underscoring the pack train's sluggish progress. Upon departing, we detected far-off gunfire ahead. Captain Weir advanced with his company, and Benteen rode farther forward. Every man understood combat was imminent. Soon after exiting the marsh, we passed a teepee on fire, probably ignited by our Indian scouts. The horses perceived peril, becoming agitated. Near this moment, we observed Sergeant Knipe from Tom Custer's C Troop bearing an instruction for Captain McDougal to accelerate with the pack mules. Benteen directed him to head back down the trail. We next sighted Trumpeter Martini, wounded yet conveying a dispatch from Custer to Benteen, urging the swift delivery of the packs. Martini, a spirited little Italian who had drummed for Garibaldi during Italy's independence struggle, was known to me as he was part of H Troop. We formerly teased him amiably, yet never did so following this fight. He demonstrated himself to be a true man of steel. His horse bled heavily from a bullet wound in its right hip, but Martini paid it no heed. Benteen ordered him to return to his company. I have always supposed Benteen deemed it needless to send further word to Captain McDougal, since Sergeant Knipe had already relayed the command to push the pack train forward with all speed. Regardless, Martini's mount was spent, and he found it hard to maintain pace with us. The noise of intense gunfire increased, and shortly we met several Crow or re-scouts herding a few Indian ponies. They yelled, "Soldiers," and motioned toward the bluffs ascending northward. We understood we were approaching the Little Bighorn Valley and that violent fighting was occurring nearby. Benteen commanded us to ready our pistols, and we stormed up the bluffs at a gallop, bracing for an immediate hostile encounter. Upon reaching the top of the initial rolling hills, the river valley abruptly opened to our left. The scene confronting us was sufficient to instill dread in the boldest hearts. Below, perhaps 150 feet or more down in the valley and roughly half a mile away, riders raced frantically amid gunfire erupting everywhere. Further along the river, we sighted large groups of mounted men whom we believed to be Indians. We ourselves rode swiftly, scarcely glimpsing this grim battlefield before spotting mounted and dismounted soldiers on a knoll to the north. We rode urgently toward them, hearts thudding with expectation. I shall pause here to relate the fate of Reno's detachment. Remember that near 12:15 p.m., Reno assumed command of 3 troops, 17 Crow and Ree scouts, and 3 White scouts. Custer, leading 5 troops, advanced in column to the right, while Reno's column went left. Benteen, with 3 troops, was ordered to scout the rugged terrain south and west. Being with Benteen, I saw nothing of the ensuing 5 hours' events. However, I have heard the reports so often that I shall try to recount them as plainly as possible. Note, I was absent and am retelling survivors' tales. As the 2 battalions descended into the dry creek bed, they would both formations advanced westward at a trot toward the Little Bighorn. Near 2 p.m., they encountered a burning teepee, holding the corpse of an Indian warrior slain in General Crook's engagement with the Indians merely a week before, under 20 miles distant. A white scout riding ahead called back to Custer that hostiles were close, remaining beyond rifle distance. Custer then signaled Major Reno to ford the stream and directed Adjutant Cook to instruct Reno to proceed 2 miles further west along the Little Bighorn, then assault the Indian encampment to the right, with the expectation that the whole command would furnish assistance. This final statement has been a disputed matter argued by numerous parties concerning the disastrous occurrences soon to transpire. Reno guided his contingent of 120 soldiers along with a few guides and scouts at a quick trot, traversing the Little Bighorn downstream and halting briefly only to let their horses drink and reorganize into troop formation on the river's western bank. The river's western side offered a relatively level valley, roughly half a mile to a mile broad, stretching toward a low plateau westward. Across the Little Bighorn, the Wolf Mountains ascended sharply, with ravines dropping from the heights to the riverbed at intervals. The stream, about 100 to 150 feet wide, ran clear and cold over a gravel bed. For almost 3 miles along the western shore, the Indian villages stood, with each of the 5 Sioux nations, Cheyenne, Blackfeet, and Arapaho, occupying distinct circles spaced nearly a quarter mile apart. To the west, immense pony herds fed, watched by Indian youths and women. Estimates suggest roughly 10,000 Indians, nearly 1/3 of all Sioux tribespeople, were assembled, encompassing 2,000 to 3,000 warriors. This is an apt point to correct a frequent misunderstanding about the hostiles' weaponry. Contrary to widespread opinion, not every warrior possessed modern repeating Winchester rifles and plentiful cartridges. In my judgment, half the warriors bore only bows, arrows, and lances, while half of the rest employed various old muzzle loaders, single-shot rifles, and miscellaneous pieces. Only some 25 to 30% of the warriors owned modern repeating rifles. Another vital fact, Indian boys aged 14 and older accompanied the warriors and fought actively in the battle, particularly during its closing phases. The soldiers, meanwhile, carried single-shot .45-70 caliber Springfield carbines, a firearm famed for its precision and lethality up to 600 yards. Yet, when discharged rapidly, the breech would foul and the greasy shells frequently jammed, resisting extraction by the extractor. This required employing a hunting knife to pry out the spent cartridge forcibly, a process that cost many a trooper his life on that ill-fated Sunday. Every soldier also bore a 6-shot, single-action Colt Army revolver, the newest model obtainable. The soldiers had been directed to carry 100 cartridges for their rifles and 24 rounds for their revolvers, either on their bodies or in saddle pouches. As the troopers dismounted with every fourth man detailed as a horse holder, numerous mounts panicked and bolted, causing the loss of thousands of rounds of critically required ammunition, especially for Custer's detachment. Returning to Reno's force after fording the river, they arranged into a column formation of fours, positioning the Indian scouts on their left flank. Shortly, Indian riders were observed charging wildly across the valley, and the southern extremity of the Indian encampments became visible. Reno then extended his 3 troops and scouts into a skirmish line, spanning the full breadth of the constricted valley. Troop M occupied the right, A held the center, and G was positioned on the left, with the scouts advancing to their left front. Major Reno ordered his men to dismount, establishing a skirmish line allowing 75 yards between each soldier. After advancing half a mile toward the Indian village, they confronted a large contingent of mounted Indians who descended upon them en masse. For 10 minutes, Reno's men maintained their position, delivering steady fire, but were quickly encircled by hundreds of mounted Indians, many armed with repeating rifles. Recognizing the peril of being surrounded, Reno commanded his men to withdraw. They mounted in disciplined order and retired 300 yards. This maneuver was scarcely completed when hundreds of mounted Indians again surged down upon them. Reno reformed his troops into a skirmish line and again dismounted them, continuing steady fire. For 10 minutes they held their ground, but the Indians relentlessly closed in from all directions, firing at close quarters and inflicting severe losses. Fearing total envelopment, Reno ordered a retreat to a cottonwood grove half a mile to the rear. Regrettably, amid the confusion, many soldiers became separated from their units, the horses stampeded, and the formation dissolved into chaos. It was here the greatest number of casualties transpired. Many troopers were shot from their saddles, killed outright, or butchered and scalped. The survivors crossed the river in disarray, scrambling up a steep bluff on the eastern shore, hotly pursued by hundreds of mounted Indians. Approximately 15 to 20 soldiers perished in the river and along its banks. Once Reno's men gained the hilltop, the Indians withdrew. At this pivotal moment around 2:30 p.m., Captain Weir arrived with his D Troop, followed immediately by Benteen's troops, H and K. Though Reno's command was disorganized, the reinforcements' arrival restored some cohesion. Benteen rapidly evaluated the situation and ordered his men into defensive positions. Soon they were reinforced by Captain McDougall's Troop B and the pack train, delivering critically required ammunition and provisions. The consolidated force dug in on the hill, bracing for a desperate stand. Custer, meanwhile, had advanced along the river with his 5 troops, seeking to outflank the Indian encampment. As they rode northward following the bluffs, they encountered the principal hostile force. At the valley's northern extremity, near the present location of the National Cemetery, the full magnitude of the Indian Army became evident. Custer's soldiers were rapidly submerged by numerical superiority. Despite courageous resistance, they were encircled and overcome while fighting to the final soldier. As dusk descended, Reno and Benteen's command on the hill discern the far-off sounds of combat, comprehending the probable grim fate of their fellow troopers. The night passed in an apprehensive vigil punctuated by sporadic skirmishes as the Indians probed their defenses. By dawn, the Indians commenced withdrawing, having achieved a conclusive triumph. The survivors from Reno and Benteen's battalions were ultimately rescued by General Terry's column, arriving 2 days afterward. The Battle of the Little Bighorn endures as a profound and tragic episode in America's past. The valor and fortitude of soldiers such as Charles Windolph, who lived to recount their experiences, offer a poignant glimpse into the stark realities of frontier conflict. This narrative furnishes a detailed and vivid viewpoint on one of the most legendary engagements in the Great Sioux War of 1876. Keep watching for further first-hand narratives of diverse battles. Wishing you a good day, and until our next encounter.